So welcome to the Asian Coaching Supervisors Network. Today, the topic of conversation and exploration together is compassion fatigue. So I want to give you a little bit of context, and I have a brief PowerPoint presentation. And then we are going to go to small groups to discuss and explore the topic. And Sunny, I didn't want to do exactly what I have done for the America's Coaching Supervision Network last month. So I'm going to share with you a tool to measure self-compassion that we didn't do in the other program. So just to do something different too. So you can also learn and benefit from that. So Sincho, thank you for being here. Great to have you with us here. And people just finished introducing each other. I don't know if you want to say hi, anything you want to say before we jump into the topic?
Hi, Simchu. Thanks. Sorry I'm a bit late here. I always enjoy the Asia Supervisors Network and organized by Damian. So I'm so happy to be here today. Thank you.
Great to have you. Great to have you with us. So I'm going to share my screen. So I'm going to do like a brief presentation, brief lecture. So compassion fatigue. Why I am choosing this topic to start with, why I presented that for the American Coaching Supervision Network here, it should say Asian Supervision Network. So I'm going to move really fast to the next slide. Okay. Basically, compassion fatigue is something that I am experiencing myself, and I am hearing my colleagues talking about all the time. Compassion fatigue, if we had to define it, or we had to express it, or we had to find a definition, we say that it's related to secondary traumatization. Is characterized by the emotional and physical exhaustion leading to a diminished ability to empathize or feel compassion for others. We frequently refer as the negative cost of caring. So compassion fatigue, the idea here with the definition is that we are getting tired, we are fatigued of working and being empathetic and working with other people. Now, as supervisors, we are holding the space for coaches. So coaches can come to us as supervisors to share what's happening to them working with their clients. The coaches, at the same time, receive a lot of information from their clients. So the way that the supervisors hold the space for the coaches hold the space for their clients. And many times the clients are holding the space for others if they are leaders in organizations. So by the time that the coach gets to the supervisor, and particularly the supervisor work with another supervisor, and I do a lot of that, I supervise supervisors. As you can see the chain in the way that the emotions and the experiences that people are having go from one level to the next. The supervisors at one point are getting a lot of heaviness. It's a lot of emotional component, and we want to add to this our personal experiences in our personal life, what's happening to us. So the idea is that because we're in the middle of the whole pandemic and I think it seems that things are getting better, we may not realize how much emotionally drained we are. So I hear from supervisors, I hear from coaches, from supervisors, from clients, from friends, from my brother. I am tired. I don't have any more energy. I am depleted. I cannot keep going. So how do we manage that? How do we navigate that? How we can be supportive? How we can be careful? Because we don't want to be cheerleaders. Why? When we are exhausted and tired, you don't want somebody to say, oh, everything is okay, everything will be good. That's sometimes not what we want to hear. So the idea here today is to create a space for reflection and to share experiences. So I want to invite you to share and think about some of your experiences and how COVID-19 and everything going in the world, because in the United States where I live right now, there are a lot of things going on too with social justice. There are a lot of political upheaval, what happened in the Congress at the beginning of the year. You know, there are crazy things happening all over the world, and this is affecting us. And we may or may not have spaces to talk about it and to reflect on that. So my goal here today is to reflect about how this is playing for us and how are we taking care of ourselves. So today, the ICF conference started, and they converged on 21st. And I started with my first session was for coaching training providers. So the first session of the day was a special meeting for all of the people who train coaches. And they were talking about how we as trainers of coaches need to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And how we need supervision, keep learning, growing, caring of ourselves. And I think that applies completely to supervisors. We need to do extra, I do believe, extra care of ourselves due to everything that's happening. And we need to find spaces for that. Now, I was interested in this topic many years ago because one of my first jobs when I moved to the United States, that was 30 years ago. So I am from Argentina, I am from Buenos Aires, and I moved to Los Angeles in 1990. And when I moved a year later, one of my first jobs as a psychologist, that was my background, was to work in an organization, a nonprofit, working with people living with HIV and AIDS.
Oh, God.
So for my local colleagues here, Sunny, Monica, it's called AIDS Project Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So I worked for AIDS Project Los Angeles for that agency, facilitating support groups. And then 2 years later, I worked for the Los Angeles Family AIDS Network, running a network for Latino families living with HIV and AIDS, where in the family, the kids, the parents, everybody was infected. So it was tough work. It was very emotional, very emotional. And I was pretty young. I was, I think now, looking at that, 30 years ago almost, I am 54. So I was around, I don't know, 25, 27, something like that, around that, 28. I was pretty young. So when I had to write my dissertation for my PhD on organizational psychology, I decided to do it on burnout, how to prevent burnout. So I was thinking, looking at burnout would help me to do my job because I'm so emotionally tired that burnout would help me to do that work. And my hypothesis was that spirituality was the answer. Not religion, but spirituality, looking for spiritual practices. Now we're talking about, I defended my dissertation in 97, when I turned 30. And remember that Monica, we went to the same program. We graduated from the same program as PhD in organizational psychology. And at that time, people were not talking about mindfulness. It didn't exist mindfulness in 97, 30 years ago. It's kind of, so what I was doing was talking about how spiritual practices and meditation and prayer, and that would help to prevent burnout and to work with all of these life and death issues. And do you know what? I couldn't prove my dissertation. I couldn't prove my hypothesis because doing the research, a lot of nurses, and I did it in healthcare providers, physicians, nurses, social workers, all of these people, like right now, they are also dealing with a lot of stress because of COVID-19.
Yeah.
They found out that many of them were very spiritual, and still spirituality didn't help them. They were not enough. Interesting. I keep wondering if I should keep researching. And at that time, I get burnout of burnout. After talking about burnout for a long time, I didn't want to talk about the topic for years. Now, a few years later, I thought, okay, I think it's time for me to come back and look at what I have studied. So I developed a scale of self-perception of spirituality. How spiritual do you perceive you are in terms of following some practices and rituals and activities? So it's not about religion. It's not about going to a synagogue or like I'm Jewish. It was not about that. It was about how we connect with something else. How we connect with the universe or nature, or there is a connection, there is something else. Some people call it God, but it may not be God. It can be whatever you believe that you can connect and you relate beyond you. So I do believe now still there is some answers there. I still believe that even though I was not able to find my hypothesis in my research, I still believe that there is something about mindfulness and spirituality and centeredness that help us. Now, I don't know, Sam, if you remember that I shared an experience in the other presentation that I did on the topic is a couple of, like over the years, I have done a lot of work in China. Like I have been going like for a few years to do coaching programs. I don't know, Jeff, if you know Dora. She was the past president of the ICF local chapter in Shanghai. I don't know if you ever met Dora. So I received a call when you had the first cases in China. And because I have been doing a few sessions, they said, Damian, please come and do a session and do virtually a session on resilience, how to deal with COVID-19. So I went back to all of my research on and all of my work on burnout, and I came up with some presentations about resilience as a solution, as a way of dealing with that. Because the question for us is how resilient we are as supervisors, and how we help coaches and clients to develop resilience as a way to navigate these big challenges. What I didn't know is that I will end doing that same session all over the world for many ICF chapters. And what I didn't know when I did the presentation is that I would end myself living with COVID-19. So I had COVID myself. So I had all of that helping me when I got COVID to deal emotionally with all of these resources. Now I'm sharing a little bit of background just to see how that plays, because with all of this, what I remember happening to me is that before I got COVID, I went to Argentina to visit, my mom was very sick. So even though there was no traveling, I still went to Buenos Aires. And this was, we had to quarantine. And I was completely, most of the time I am very centered, but I was completely out of center. I was, going through all of this stress of my mom being very sick and being locally there and quarantining and not being able to go to see her. And I remember keep asking myself, how do I get myself to center? How do I get myself to center? So I do believe that centeredness and bringing back to center is one of the ways to deal with all of the challenges we are having. Is being aware that we are not centered, but we need to be first aware that we are not being centered. That the challenge is realizing, okay, I'm not centered. What do I need to bring myself to centeredness? So this is, remember, asking myself, what do I do? What do I do to be centered? And I do believe that breathing and meditation is, for me, is the only way. Now, if you have other ideas, let's share with each other and let's learn from each other. So let me share with you a couple of more slides, and then we're going to go to small groups. And I want you to consider, to think about how you resonate to these stories that I share with you. And I also want to share with you an instrument to measure self-compassion, because we need to also be forgiving ourselves for being out of center. We also need to recognize when we are not in a good place to work. Like I remember one day, I was exhausted. And I called all of my clients and I canceled everything. And I said, I'm sorry, I am not feeling well, I need to cancel. And there is a part of us, I don't know how many of you relate to this, that as coaches, we believe that we cannot cancel a session. That it's not okay to cancel a session. We need to show up. And I think sometimes it's very wise to know when it's not the right time to show up. Yeah. And being able to cancel session without feeling guilty, because we feel guilty, something is wrong. So knowing that there is a time for that. Let me finish with you sharing a couple of more slides, and then I will share the instrument and go back to small groups. So the idea is that compassion fatigue is triggered by personal and professional experiences and affect all aspects of our lives, because it may affect not only being tired, but also our emotions, may affect not being able to sleep. And some of the symptoms may be this sleep activity, we're not sleeping well, we cannot think clearly, we isolate ourselves, we feel bad about ourselves, we may be irritable or angry. Maybe you have seen that in yourself or colleagues. And I can share the slides, no problem. And Jeff, I can share this with everybody so you don't have to worry about this.
Thank you.
Can be loss of hope. You become a little bit hopeless. You start feeling pains in different parts of your body. So there is a physical reaction too. And sometimes that may look at as absenteeism at work. Now, if in the face of adversity, we have a choice. We can be bitter or we can be better. Now you say, easy to say, not so easy to do. But the idea that we also, and we always have a choice. So the idea is, okay, what are our choices? Now, in terms of compassion fatigue, there is the other side, that is the compassion satisfaction. And this is when you use the compassion instead of being fatigued, of being so empathetic and working and supporting others, when you find fulfillment in working with others and in the work that you do. And it can give you a source of hope, strength, and resilience. So that will be the other side. So compassion fatigue is you feel depleted. And compassion satisfaction is the other side. It's feeling, okay, I am having all of these challenges, but I'm going to use my compassion, my self-love to find hope, to find strength, to find resilience. And it's acknowledging, recognizing, and remembering we're making a difference. That we are not perfect, we can be tired, we may need to cancel our session, but we're still good professionals. But we need to notice, acknowledge, and appreciate the work that we are doing, so we can bring that to our centeredness. So with this, I want to share with you some of the elements of the instrument, and I'm going to share with you this instrument that you can do later. So later you can go and do an evaluation of how is your compassion fatigue or your compassion satisfaction. But I want to share with you now, and I will put that also in the chat so you can download it. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Can you okay, the compassion fatigue satisfaction self-test, can you read that?
Yeah.
Is it big enough?
Yes.
Okay, good, because this is, there is permission to use that with credit to the people who develop that are here, STAM, BH, Latin Press, Figly, all of these people that are, and this is the resource where you can find it. So this is explained that you can share always if you give credit to the people who did that. So here, this is self-test when you need to put, if you never, rarely, a few times, sometimes, often, or very often. So just to get a sense of what is your level of self-compassion and compassion fatigue and compassion satisfaction. So I am happy, I find my life satisfying, I have a lead that sustain me, I feel now strength from others. I find that I learn new things from whose I care for. So you will see a lot of elements here. I feel connected to others, I feel calm. So here you have a lot of elements. I am a sensitive person, I have flashback connected to those I help. So there is all of these items, and you put the number, and then there is a key that you need to follow to see how they relate. You know, some elements are like more related to the high level of compassion fatigue, and some are more related to compassion satisfaction. So at the end, you can see how these elements play with you. So I'm going to share with you this list, and you may look at that for a couple of minutes, and then you may discuss some of these items with your colleagues. So for example, here, I think that I need more close friends. I feel invigorated after working with those I help. I experience traveling dreams similar to those I help. So you can see these items go to one side or the other. That will give them a level of, okay, how these elements are playing for you. So in the chat, you will see right now, I am going to share with you this scale. And let me just do that, will take a minute. I am also sharing here the slides for everybody who wants the slides. Okay, so you may want to download these two documents. And what we're going to do now is we are going to go to groups. We're going to do 3 groups, 4 people each. And my invitation is to discuss in your groups what reactions you have from whatever you heard today from me, from my examples, from this brief presentation. How do you relate to these different elements of that I covered here today? Okay. So let's spend 15 minutes doing that, and then we will come back. I'm going to ask for a volunteer to share what you discussed, and then we'll have a discussion with everybody. Okay, so I'm going to open this for 15 minutes. Now, the people who have not the cameras on, can you still participate? Juan?
Yes, Damian, I can participate.
Okay, great. Thank you. Great having you here, actually here. Juan, can you participate?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, you don't need to have the camera on, but I need to know if you can participate just to be sure that there are enough people in each group. Okay, great. So have fun in these 15 minutes, and we come back in 15 minutes. I'm going to stop recording. Okay, welcome back. So let's hear from you. How were your conversations? Who would like to, let's hear from the three groups. And let's open to discussion. Who would like to start? What did you discuss in your groups?
Well, in the interest of time, I'm happy to jump in.
Okay.
Maybe showing too much this maybe North American jumping in tendency, cultural tendency. But anyway, so one of the things that came up in our discussion was compassion forensics. I had also not heard that term, and it seemed like it's one of the key aspects of that is really separating the facts from one's judgment about what happened. Right. So I took that away as something that stuck in my mind. That, for me, I find that I can often regain my energy. So we talked a bit about energy management. I can regain it by getting a good night's sleep. And then one of my colleagues said, well, for her, if she's been working with people and all that, it might be hard to get a good night's sleep. You might be sleepless because this stuff is still churning in your mind. And I thought, okay. We talked about, what else did I write down here? Sometimes situations can take us unawares, right? Sometimes we can prepare and, we go in and we've got our strategies all set. And sometimes we're just, whoa. So, we talked a little bit about maybe thinking about what happened and maybe trying to set boundaries in the future, walks in nature. So those are some of the things that came up. So colleagues, if I missed any key points, please jump in and add them.
Well, from what you're saying, also getting help. Getting help we're talking about American culture. We have here people from different cultures. And getting help is seen differently from different cultures. I don't know what my colleagues here, and we have a lot of diversity within the United States, but then we have people from other countries too. But the question is how we relate to asking for help. Now we can work with our clients and we can support them to get help. But what about us? How effective we as coaches or supervisors for us to get that help?
I think Monica also was in our group and she works in healthcare and I worked in healthcare for about a decade. We did some research when COVID first started, and doctors and nurses often are the last people to go into therapy or look for help. People in the healthcare professions, even though that's what they do, is expend all of this care, but they rarely, go and request help themselves.
Well, one of the things in Singapore, I work with a charity group that promotes mindfulness. And ever since pandemic started, we've been holding lunchtime mindfulness sessions for all the healthcare workers, just to drop in, breathe with us for 30 minutes and off they go. Because sometimes if you ask them to process, they don't even have the energy to process. They're just so overwhelmed. So it's just creating a small space in the day to invite them and come sit with us.
One of the issues we've had in Australia actually is that so many people require therapy. The government has given millions and millions of extra dollars for free psychological help. You can't find a psychologist because they're all packed out completely. Their books are full. And so it's been a real issue, actually. I've had to beg colleagues of mine to see clients, you know, please, just please, because you can't find anyone.
Yeah, I think that there is some research about that. I think that the research is in the United States. Since COVID, the cases of diagnosed depression and anxiety grow tremendously, and probably that's worldwide.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was there before, but COVID make it
much worse.
Much worse.
There's been a huge uptake also for young people who've and sort of 16, 17-year-olds who've been at home, locked up. It's been really serious, and a massive preponderance of eating disorders as well. Really ghastly, actually.
Yeah, and you know, we have seen a surge in our helplines calls as well from the young people, or on suicides, or some are less traumatic, but there are a lot of, you know, being cooped up. It's very pronounced. So compassion fatigue, you know, it's not just within the coaching system, it's filtering through
everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah.
And I think that's the difference between burnout and compassion fatigue. So burnout is generally related to work. So you are tired of work, like if you're a teacher, you're a nurse, policeman. There are some professions that bring a lot from you. And then you get tired and you feel like burned, you don't feel you have energy to keep doing your work. But compassion fatigue, it goes to other parts of the life. It's not only related to work, it's also impact your relationships at home. And there is an interesting, if you do a search, there are a couple of TED Talks about compassion fatigue. So if you do a search in the internet, and there is one from a person talking about her and her relationship with her mother. It's very interesting. I don't think it was good. It was not great for me to share your piece with it, but if you do the research, you will find her. There are two. One is a nurse, and one it's somebody who, I don't know, was a social worker. Or so there are a lot of resources. You will see in the document that I sent you with a self-assessment, there are a huge list of resources. So there you can, if you want to research the topic, you will find a lot of different resources. It's a really good resource for you to go and do some research, and particularly because you will get your supervisees bringing these topics to you. So these are all resources you can share with them.
Thank you.
Everybody, all groups share now, or there is one group missing? Everybody.
We actually didn't. We really didn't talk about how we recover from compassion fatigue. We talked, and it was mainly Kevin and I who talked, because Wendy and Anushli were not, didn't have their cameras on, but Anushli did talk. And we talked mainly about how we'd experienced it and when we'd experienced it, and rather than how we dealt with it, actually. Well, I talked a little bit about how I dealt with it, which was very, very bad at one point by eating rather a lot of chocolate. Didn't help, really. It was a very short-term help. But we were having a very good discussion, actually. We just didn't get to how we dealt with it, which was the point of the discussion. Sorry.
No, because it's all part, whatever way you did it's okay. Like, it's interesting what you said about eating. Like, when the pandemic started, I gained a lot of weight.
Yes, me too.
I was eating, and then it's okay, that's it. Now I am going to put my energy in losing the weight. So a year later, I lost 30 pounds.
It's great.
Yeah, so, but it requires discipline and energy and work, and putting the energy in a productive way, in something that make you feel good. That's a good example about working on yourself and working with a trainer, and, you know, investing in yourself. So this is, we have time to wrap up now. I want to ask you, everyone here, before we go, how you're going to invest in yourself? How you're going to invest in yourself to be at the best place. And I think, Jeff, like sleeping well is a great way to invest in yourself, ensure that you sleep well and you're ready for the next day. And let's go around and let's finish with this. Let's get to hear everyone.
Sorry, Damian, can I invite Juan to represent our group because he said he wanted to say something.
Oh,
Juan,
okay,
are you
yes.
still there?
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, welcome. Okay, great. Yeah, what do you want to say?
Okay. I'm just representing my group. By the way, it's my first time here, and I'm just curious. How does it feel like to be with you guys? So, in our group, during the breakout session, we had talked about mainly, and the latest topic we had about spirituality, in somewhat coping up with this compassion fatigue. Spirituality can really help, and we had shared our activities or our modes of spirituality modes that we were doing, so that we could at least survive or thrive in this trying time. So we had talked about like walking, like Ma'am Felicia would say, painting. So we also do someone praying and meditation, and one of the common activities we do is breathing, like deep breathing exercises. So I think that that sums up our sharing about spirituality activities. Thank you.
Great.
Well done. Thank you,
Thank
Juan.
you for sharing that.
Thanks, Juan. I'd like to add also that, David, when you said something that that it didn't work for some people, that spirituality did not help, and it kind of bothered me, because I think it's not a conclusion that spirituality does not help, but maybe it's to augment with other things. And that's why I share in my group. And there are things like, like, for example, because sometimes you overextend, therefore, you need to think of self-care. And some meditation, like Monica saying, going for a walk, or connecting to nature. And then we connect to nature, there is this sense of spirituality, the sense of peace, there's a sense of connection back to our creator. So I think that's something that helps us to center ourselves, maybe. And one key piece came from our group, where sometimes some people, at least we know when we are not centered. But that's a skill or a technique that's not been available or accessible to others. And what Felicia said, you bring a group into a mindfulness or a centeredness exercise helps people to they know that they're not centered, and therefore they can recenter.
So I wonder that, well, I was not happy with my results either. I was pretty upset too. But maybe after that, there have been many other studies that show that study was wrong. That it may, because now there are a lot of studies that show how mindfulness, and even with the study of the brain, we're talking, the research was done in 95 when I did the research. So, so maybe as my study didn't work out, many others did work out, because there are many research studies that show that mindfulness, they work physiologically in the brain to bring a state of relaxation and peacefulness. So,
I mean, I have a question now. Some people have the extremes, like I have one client, either extreme compassionate or the other way around. What are your thoughts around it?
Yeah, when they're too empathetic, and sometimes there is an issue with boundaries.
Either too empathetic or too compassionate.
Yeah, so sometimes there is not good boundaries, and the coach feel the same thing that the client is feeling, and how to manage that. So they when supervision may help, definitely can be a good place to explore that. And as a supervisor, supervision of supervision. It doesn't matter where you are, you need to keep working with somebody. Like I work with I have two supervisors. So yeah, it's a great question, and actually to keep exploring and managing, but that's a good place. That's a great place where you need help. Yeah, thank you for me that example.
Thank you.
Okay, we need to wrap up. Let's go around and let's get everybody to share anything you want to say before we go. Something that you would like to do, something that you commit to doing after this session today. Anything you want to say in one or two sentences.
I can start. I have a very large dog who's very gentle and kind and woolly and sort of cuddly dog. And he's been fantastic for me through COVID. And walking with him in the morning for about an hour and again in the afternoon. Have to do it, have to take him out. And I live in a very lovely part of Sydney. It's been a really spiritual experience, actually. And he makes me laugh every single time something happens that makes me laugh. And of course, you can't feel miserable when you laugh. So I recommend having a dog. I think it's brilliant. And I never had one before. So it's been a good experience.
Thank you for sharing that.
I've had a dog, Monica, and I miss him terribly, but where I live, I can't have a pet.
Oh.
So I want to move.
Yes,
so that I can experience that comfort again. So I envy you, but I think it's very true. Pets are just wonderful. They sort of absorb, you know, the stress.
For myself, what comes up is energy management. And so I'll do a little bit more research into different things that I can do to manage my energy better, to kind of get rid of the, if we put it in far too simple terms, get rid of the uncomfortable or the bad energy and kind of breathe in the good energy. Thank you.
Great.
Perhaps a good reminder for myself is, you know, in meditation, every time our thought wanders, and when we come back, the first thing is not to say, hey, I came back, but it's just to congratulate oneself and say, I noticed my thought went away and I'm back here now. So whenever we are, you know, whether it's chocolate, I still love chocolate, or food or whatever, just congratulate ourselves. I noticed this habit. I noticed this is what I'm doing. Just congratulate ourselves.
That's a great one. That's a great one. Give us our credit. Yes, so important. Monica?
Thank you to everybody for everything everybody shared. It's so wonderful. And on that theme, you know, the way that I practice day to day is very solitary with me and my clients. And so I have a very specific practices that I do on my own. But this forum reminds me that there's a beauty in connecting with others. And that I could recharge in relationship and just simple conversation. And even though I don't know, most people are just meeting you for the first time, just being in this space with no end goal, but just sharing is recharging. And that was a wonderful reminder. So thank you to everybody.
Well, we're missing Kevin. Anything you want to say?
Well, this is my first session here in this group, so I think this was a great opportunity. I think for me, it's okay to feel compassion fatigue. It's a part of self-care. So the thing is, you are allowed to feel it as long as you have a mechanism to cope with it. And it's a part of self-care as coaches, because we see a lot of clients with lots of issues. It's okay to feel it and then move on.
Thank you, Kevin, for that. Yeah.
I'd like to just add on what Kevin said. Thank you for sharing that. Sometimes it's good. It's okay to notice that you're feeling it, and to go a little bit of a deep, and then come out of it, because you're actually it's actually in the energy where you're working with in the corporate world. So there's so much in the corporate world that you're trying to support, and you're feeling it. Therefore, like Jeff says, how do I not get caught in this negative energy? I need to step out and go out and then recharge and come back in again. So I was just sharing how this morning I saw a message from someone who said, I need help. And I responded a little differently. And I noticed I was different in how I responded internally compared to I responded a day ago. So thank God for the shift for myself.
Great. Elaine, anything you want to share?
Yeah, I think this is very helpful session, and I shared in our breakout. My background is business, not psychology. So compassion fatigue is new to me, but it's very helpful for me to be more mindful about the status when I'm doing the coaching or after coaching, and to connect what I'm doing, practicing in meditation or mindfulness. Which is very helpful for me to coping with this kind of fatigue. Yeah, very helpful. Thank you. And thank you, Felicia and Juan. I've learned a lot during our breakout as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Ellen. Juan, anything you want to say?
No more. I think I have inputted it in the chat box.
Okay. Okay, great. And Noshli, anything you want to say before we go?
Yeah, thank you so much for the great sharings, because there is a learning in through these connections, and consciously being mindful of the energy. I think that's the key. I'm pausing and I'm reminding myself today.
Thank you for being here. Thanks, everybody. And next month, we have Monica. Monica Cable is going to be doing a group supervision demo. So we didn't talk about the details, if you want to do the recording in advance or you want to do it live. Do you have a preference, Monica?
I prefer to do it live, actually.
Okay.
So I was thinking about it. I don't know if any of you are interested, but I'm going to need 4 to 6 people and one person to bring a case, actually. Yeah, that'd be great.
We have Sunny, we have Monica. Anybody else would like to commit next month? It's always the same, the last Wednesday in the morning in Asia.
It's not hard. You don't have to worry about it. You can just show up. So anyway,
I'm happy to show up.
Yeah, we can just
at least.
Yeah. Count me in, Monica. It's for the group supervision,
okay,
right?
great. So we have for people, if anything happened and for some reason you cannot come, don't worry. But you want everybody to come prepared to present the case and then choose one, or do you want to?
Yes, I don't think we'll have time. We might have time for 2, but I'll just kind of.
Or maybe one. One will be enough too.
Yeah, one.
But the question is, do you want? Sometimes what they do is, I ask 4 people, everybody bring one thing, and then they decide as a group.
Yes,
which one
I'll do that. Yeah.
Do you want to work on?
I thought, what I'm going to do, I just was thinking about it actually, is just to give a little bit of an intro as to group supervision and why group as opposed to individual, that kind of thing.
Great.
And then we could go into so that people can actually experience it if you haven't, and if you have, just to hopefully enjoy it. Hopefully. So if that's okay with you, and then we'll have a debrief afterwards.
And group supervision is a good way to deal with compassion fatigue.
It is.
Yes,
actually.
definitely. Definitely. Okay, everybody, have a good day, good night, wherever you're in the world. We'll see you soon. Okay, thanks for coming.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Good week,
Thanks,
everyone.
Damian.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Take care.